I would imagine that you have your hands full, both at home and at work. And so I am going to take no more than 1 hour of your time this evening. I think you're going to find it useful. I went through a preview today with some folks that I trust on the content that we're going to go through over the next hour, and people thought it was really useful. So before we start, I just want to do one quick audio check, video check, make sure that you can see me. I am here, I'm live, and hear me. So if you could just type in the chat box, yes, if you can hear and see me okay. Type no if you can't hear and see me okay, which I don't know how you could do that, but I'd love to know. And then we're going to get started. The turnout is huge, and people are typing yes, so I think we're good to go. Well, thank you. So why don't we start by taking a deep breath, because we got a lot to cover. You are in the right place this evening if you are worried about your job. And I'll give you some data in a couple of minutes so that you know that you are in very good company. You're also in the right place if you are thinking about your next career move, whether it's this week or maybe later this year. Maybe you just want more confidence in making that move, which I can understand. It's always a difficult transition. And importantly, if you're going to listen to someone like me, that means you got to be unwilling to settle. I will not settle when I hire people. I won't let you settle when it comes to your career. And I'm going to give you some blunt talk tonight, some no BS talk. And that's part of why I wanted to do it after hours. I might even swear. So I'm telling you that up front, but I'll try to keep that to a minimum. So if those things interest you, you're in the right place. Otherwise, you are in the wrong place. We have a ton of people. People are still kind of joining the session, but we're going to get started because I like to be on time. And like I said, we will finish within 1 hour. I'm going to watch the time. After that hour, you are free to drop off, and I will stay on all night long doing Q&A. So you can count on me to make sure every single question is answered. It's probably hard to imagine this right now, but my goal tonight is to make sure that you are sleeping soundly, knowing that your career is as secure as possible. That's my goal. Maybe not an easy one right now. I know that you can do this. I have seen many, many people do this under the most trying circumstances. But I will caution you that it takes a very different approach than what most people do. And for that reason, I'm going to give you some very straight talk this evening. And I hope you'll take it with the knowledge that I'm only trying to be helpful. I'm not trying to be alarmist in any way, but I think it's important to take a very real, practical view of where we are. Let me give you just 60 seconds on me. I know some of you personally, I'm sure, but for others, I've been in recruiting now for half my life, roughly, most of it at the executive level. I was very humbled to be named the matchmaker by Inc. magazine a while back. And I've started 4 companies. So in addition to just being a headhunter, I've actually started and scaled companies. I've raised, a lot of money in venture capital, worked in private equity, and I've hired about 3,000 people. So I think that can be useful for you because you can kind of see it from the other side, and I'll be in a genuine reflecting mirror, if you will, on what works. And I've interviewed, many, many more. When I'm not a headhunter, I actually teach recruiting at the Kellogg School of Management here in Chicago. And that course that I teach is based on the best-selling book that I published last year called Recruit Rockstars. So this is my my career, right or wrong, and hopefully I can share with you some things that'll be useful this evening. Over the next hour, what I'd like to do is talk about how to safeguard and protect your current role, help you with some ideas to find your next role if that's something that you're interested in doing. I've got some very clear ideas on where the opportunities are, and I'll share those with you. And I'm also going to share with you, frankly, some of the biggest mistakes that people make. when you get to my age, you start to realize that really the only advantage is you've seen this movie before. Obviously, I haven't seen this particular movie before. None of us have, but I've seen recessions and impending recessions before multiple times, and I've seen people make a lot of the same mistakes. And my goal tonight is to help you avoid those mistakes. So type in the chat box if we're off to a decent start, and if those things would be helpful for you. I'd really love to know. So just type yes or no. If that's kind of why you're here, protect your current role, find your next role, figure out the industries that need you right now, and avoid some of the mistakes. And I'm going to take a sip of water as we go. Okay, so a lot of yeses. Yes, yes. I got one fuck yes. I guess that's good. But thanks, you guys, and let's keep rolling. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this now on a Thursday night? And I think we all probably know the answer to that. Our world has changed. And while I'm not going to be alarmist, I am going to be very direct because I've seen the mechanics. I've hired many. I've laid folks off. I've been on both sides of that myself. And our world has changed, and there's just no denying that. We're faced with this monumental health crisis, which I'm not going to belabor. Hopefully by now, you've taken every precaution that's been advised. I'm certainly, ready for the long haul, and hopefully you and your family are safe and safeguarded. And I'll encourage you to do as we are instructed by the authorities, regardless of your political affiliation. Right now, I think that's the absolute best thing that we can do. But I'm not going to focus on that tonight because in addition to this health crisis, we also now have this economic crisis, which is, of course, tied to the first. And that's really what we're going to be spending our time on. If you haven't had a chance to look, and maybe you shouldn't, our collective stock portfolios have lost about a quarter of their value in record time, about 3 weeks. And that's just a stock chart, but it is reflective, of course, of the collective wisdom of the markets, which is to say that most experts will say that we are heading into a recession. Some experts say we are heading into a depression, and others say we are heading into a global depression. And I don't know the answer any better than you do, but I will say that this is a time when you don't want to get caught flat-footed with regard to your career, and that's why I decided to now. The good news is we will get through this. We survived 9/11. We've put a man on the moon. We've won wars. This is a different kind of war, but it is a war. We survived 2008. I'm optimistic as I've been. Hopefully you are too. I know that can be very trying right now when you're at home in a one-bedroom with 2 kids, trying to do your work, and worried about that cough that you have. I totally get it. But at the same time, we have to have the same sense of optimism as Americans that we always have. It's what carries us through. And I promise this too will pass. At the same time, I'm not going to BS you. I will tell you from an economic standpoint that this is where we're at. We are on the beach, and that tsunami is coming. I've seen this movie before, not this particular movie, but all the clues are there. If you haven't seen them, which is understandable because it's really just in the past 20 days that this has taken place. I've been working with client CEOs who 3 weeks ago were facing the most brutal war for talent that they have ever faced. I've been doing executive search now for 25 years, and it's been the hardest to get these roles filled with great talent. 20 days later, many of my clients are now looking at what to do. Most have hiring freezes. Some are planning to lay off. The tsunami is coming, and those who are caught flat-footed will have some real challenges. I know that's not going to be you. That's how you're spending this evening, and so let's get to it. And just as a point of data, Stephen Mnuchin the other day said that we could get to 20% unemployment. Just for perspective, we're at 3.5% at last check. So I don't know that it's going to 20%. Our president doesn't either. But I think it's safe to say that you may see it at 5, 10, 15% very soon. And I don't want you to get caught in that. So let's talk about that. This is another great, evidence. When you see this type of change in behavior, this signals just psychologically a hunker down mentality. Hunker down mentality translates into companies stop hiring and they quickly put the brakes on and start going in reverse. So that happens over the course of 20 days, something we've never seen before. I would encourage you to not treat this time period as spring break. My kids are home from school, and it's very easy to kind of think, okay, we're all going to be cooped up in the house for a week or two. And I hope that's right. But many experts who I listen to, who I trust, say that we may be cooped up for a month or two. Some say a quarter or two. And the longer we're cooped up means less economic activity, which means more unstable companies, which means more job reduction potentially. So because we don't know how long it's going to be, I'd encourage you to not treat this like a 1-week spring break where we can ease off the gas. It's time to double down. And I'm going to give you some thoughts on how to do that. Now, it is not all doom and gloom, right? There are going to be some people that hide, but there are going to be many people that come out of this stronger than ever, companies that come out of this stronger than ever, careers that are stronger than ever, and I think, frankly, leaders that are going to be made. I've been reading a lot and watching a lot, and some business leaders have really emerged as just phenomenal leaders, as wartime leaders. And you're going to see that this is going to be the stories that our kids and our grandkids write about. There's always opportunity, even in a tsunami. Some of the best, most longstanding companies in this country were started during depressions, during recessions. And I've just tracked, I've been writing down some things the past couple of days, but some of these food companies, their sales, their revenue have increased multiples in 20 days. American Well, called Amwell, is a telehealth company. Their activity is up 20 times in the past 20 days. Obviously, Zoom video conferencing. Walmart, if you look at their stock chart, has never been this high. So there's always opportunity. The challenge is to find it. It's not always easy to find, but it's there. You can only do that if you stay calm. I have seen people panicking the past week, and it doesn't do any good. It certainly doesn't do their family any good or their staff if they are leaders at work, which many of you are. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So I'm going to approach this with a calm head this evening. I hope you'll do the same. But at the same time, it's important that we batten down the hatches for that storm because it is coming. It's not even a question now. The denial phase should be past. And now the question is, how deep will it go and how long will it last? And so, since we don't know either of those, unfortunately, we kind of need to assume the worst and hope for the best. And what I've found to do that, and I won't take credit for this, my first boss taught me this. He said, fake it till you make it. He would throw me into these circumstances, and it was some of the great leadership development that I've had, which was he would just throw me into stuff, and I'd say, how do I do this? What do I do? And he'd say, fake it till you make it. And I'd encourage you to do the same because none of us have done this before. We need to be strong for our families and our teams at work, for our customers, our vendors, for ourselves. When we believe that we can do something, turns out we can actually usually do it. And so I'm going to give you some strategies tonight on how to do that. Now, I mentioned some of the big mistakes. So I've seen these mistakes in every recession, every economic issue. Some people panic. That's not a winning strategy. You need a game plan and keep your wits about you. A very common temptation, if your company is not on strong footing, is to quickly take a job at a competitor, because many of your relationships are probably going to be with people at competitors in the industry. And the challenge with that and how it can be a mistake is that the issues your company is facing are probably facing other companies in your industry. And so you may be getting off one ship and going to another ship that's in roughly the same conditions. So big mistake that a lot of people make. Another is to hop into a new role without doing due diligence. Again, this derives from panic, decision-making, and poor decision-making. Sometimes it's better to hang on and wait, do your due diligence before you jump onto a new situation. The other extreme of that mistake is holding out for the perfect situation, which in an economy like we're about to face probably doesn't exist. Some things are going to have to give, and I'll give you some strategies in that too. Common mistake I see is spending time on stuff that absolutely is meaningless in a job search, such as spending hours and hours on a resume that no one's going to look at. And some people wait and see, right? That's their strategy. They're gonna wait this out. And the danger there is if it is a month or two or a quarter or two instead of a week or two, they're going to be in trouble. Remember, you do not need to outrun the bear. You just need to outrun the folks behind you. And there is so much opportunity still in this economy. I remain an optimist, but it is going to get harder to find over the next few months and quarters. And I'm going to help you find it over the next 45 minutes. As a starting point, you must know these two things. You must know the cash burn rate for your business and the cash burn rate for your household. I'm shocked by how many business leaders don't know one or the other or both. This is oxygen. I'm not a numbers guy, right? Not how I kind of came up, but I know my numbers. And if you don't know how long your cash is going to last at work in your company, if it's a startup or even a larger company like Boeing these days, as big as it gets, burning $1 billion a week right now, and your household, you're going to have a problem. So if you don't have clarity on that, that's what this weekend homework is finding out and figuring out and crunching the numbers on how long can your cash last your business and your household. And the way to pressure test that is to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And what I would recommend that we do is to assume that your revenue will be down 40% for the next year. Now, I know that sounds awful. Sounds awful coming out of my mouth, but my goal is to give you the best advice. And my best advice is hope for the best and plan for the worst. Well, what's the worst? Well, there have been periods where revenue has declined 40%. In some industries more, in a very, very rapid period of time. And look at the stock market, it's down 23% in 20 days. Some industries will probably cease to exist. Many companies will cease to exist. You'll need to make that determination in your situation, but I think a safe assumption for most will be 40% for the next 12 months. And if you can withstand that, you're probably in pretty good shape. So that's kind of the starting assumption. The situation that we're in is that these dominoes are just now falling, and each day more and more of them are falling, and it causes these other issues, which causes these other issues, and people are still getting an understanding of what all those dominoes to fall are. And so whether you're out of a job right now, looking for a job actively, or whether you're in a job, all of this applies to you. The way I kind of view a career, and I would encourage you to think about your career, both short-term and long-term, is to think about all the people that, kind of touch you. This is a derivative of Porter's 5 forces. And I kind of think of it as your career forces, right? This uncertainty, this new period, this new tsunami that we're facing impacts your boss and your manager. And you need to think about his or her impact. How are they being impacted at home, at work, their stresses, their worries, their fears? Your customers are facing the same uncertainty. Your vendors, your team, if you have one, and I know many of you are CEOs and vice presidents of departments, so your staff are also faced by the same uncertainty and fear and all these characteristics. Your competitors, right? And your board, your private equity firm, your venture capital firm, right? They're right now deciding what to do. They were raising a fund, or they're trying to decide which of their portfolio companies are going to make it. And so it's important to keep your wits about you and use this framework. And again, this weekend, you could kind of sit down. I'd encourage you to have a glass of wine while you're doing the exercise and really think about each of these 6 categories and what they're going through right now, what issues they're facing, and make yourself invaluable to these constituents. It's a great way to recession-proof your job. I'm going to take a sip of water, type in the chat box if you're getting this, if you're on track, and if it's making sense so far. I'm also, like I said, going to take as many questions as you want at the end. We're going to hold off till the end, and then I'll stay up all night if I have to. I had 2 extra cups of coffee today, so I am shot out of a cannon. And type in the chat box if this is making sense. Okay, great. We are good to go. So now let's go to the next level. I'm going to start with an exercise, which is how at risk are you? Now, I developed this quiz late last night, far too late. Grab a pencil or a pen. I'll give you a minute to do that. Anything that you can write with. And we're just going to tally up some numbers. And the goal is to figure out how at risk is your current position. If you're not currently employed, you can take a break for a couple of minutes. But if you're currently working, I think this is going to be a useful exercise because I've seen how this kind of plays out with some of my clients. Okay, so let's start with your industry. And you're going to get, for each of these items, you're going to give yourself either 1 point or 2 points. I kept it really simple because I'm not a numbers guy. Okay, so your industry. Is it a medicine or is it a vitamin? Let me explain what I mean. Medicine means your customers must have it. They can't live without it. That is a medicine. A vitamin means, it's nice to have, but I can stop taking it. I can stop using it. That's a vitamin, okay? So give yourself 1 point or 2 points. 1 if it's a medicine, 2 if it's a vitamin. Just write these down. We're going to go to the next one, and we're going to go rapid fire. Your company's cash runway, how much money your company has in the bank. And if you don't know it, just put down a 2 because you should know it. If you have more than a year's cash in the bank in your company, then that you're in pretty good shape. Put down a 1. If you have less than a year, you can't survive that year that we talked about, put down a 2. And if you don't know, put down a 2. Okay. If you are a middle manager, if you're not a middle manager, put down a 1. If you are a middle manager, put down a 2. So if you're a CEO, that's a 1. If you're an individual contributor, sales rep, etc., that's a 1. But if you're a mid-level manager, you're more at risk, you're going to put down a 2. Okay, let's go through your compensation. If you make less than 100 grand per year, put down a 1. If you make more than 100 grand, if you're a high-paid individual, put down a 2. Hopefully you're just jotting these all down, okay? Are you a maker or shaker? Let me explain this. A maker is someone who makes the product at your company. If it's a software company, that's a software developer. If you make cars and you weld the windshield onto the car can't leave the factory without it, so you'd put down a 1. If you're not a maker or a shaker is someone who sells the product. So make the product or sell the product. If you don't do one of those, you get a 2, okay? If you're a maker or a shaker, then you're a 1. If your job can be outsourced, which, if you're really honest, may very well be the case, but if you do something, a heart surgeon cannot yet be outsourced. That would be a 1. If you can be outsourced, you are a data processor, a data entry person. That can certainly be outsourced. That's a 2, okay? Can it be done virtually? Can it be done remotely? And I don't just mean this week or this month, but in general, if the answer is no, you have to be on site, then you're less at risk. You get a 1. If yes, then it's a 2. Your performance reviews, we're almost done. If your performance reviews over the past 2 years have been great, let's call that top 10%, then you're less at risk. That's awesome. Put yourself down for a 1. Anything else, put yourself down for a 2. If your company's customers pay in advance, like Amazon, which means you collect the money and then you fulfill the product or service, you're less at risk. That's a 1. If they pay after the fact, which tends to go out and increase over times in recessions, you're a 2. If your product has a very short sales cycle, right? Very easy, low price point, low consideration, it's a 1. like a bar of soap. If it's a long sales cycle, like a house or a car or a big SaaS company, 2. And the last one, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, if you believe that you can be a wartime leader, then give yourself a 1. And I'll define that in a few minutes. If you don't think you can be a wartime leader, it's a 2. Take a minute, add those up. 1 or 2, add them all up, and I'll give you your score. Okay, here's your scores. If your score was 11 to 15, you got a pretty low risk, right? You shouldn't be too nervous. Certainly some things you should do. If you're in the middle, 16 to 18, moderate degree of risk. Anything over 18, I would say high degree of risk. So the point of the exercise is to really think about, and you can go through the same exercise with your spouse, your partner, roommates, friends, kids, whatever. And I'd be interested if you want to type in the chat box what your number was. Let's take a look. So a couple of 13s, 15, 19, a couple of 20s, things over 20, especially a little nerve-wracking for me right now. Just type in the chat box what your scores were. 1 was 11, which is the lowest you can get. But I'd say most are above average. So let's say most are over 17. So in a minute, I'm going to tell you some things that you can do to safeguard your current role. Let's do that now. Okay. In your current role, there are some things you can do tomorrow to reduce the risk that you're going to get swept up in that tsunami. Now, if your company or your industry gets swept up, different issue. Not much you can do about that unless you're the CEO. But for your role, there's a few things you can do. Number 1, over communicate. Super hard right now. We're all working from home, myself included. And it makes the bar that much higher, right? Over communicating up, over communicating down to your team, over communicating out to your investors and your board, to your customers, right? Over communicate, over communicate. Second, quantify. This is a time for quantified results, quantifiable achievements, metrics. If you're not wired that way, this is going to get more challenging, and I encourage you to partner up with someone who is. Regular self-promotion. Now, let me be very clear what I mean. I don't mean bragging or self-promoting in that way, but because you're working from home, we're all working from home for the next week, month, quarter, I think. It's important to make yourself visible to your manager, to your executive team, to your investors, to your customers. Oh, it goes back to over communicating so that people know what you're doing, what's working, the traction you're making, the progress you're making against all these odds. Super important. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, right? And people are going to get over the next few months maniacally focused on their keyboard and their Mac and what they're doing because they're at home and their kids are in the background trying to learn something. Super important to use self-promotion appropriately. The next thing you can do to protect your current role is to take on the role of a wartime leader. And I want to talk about this because I've been reading a bit about it the past 2 weeks. I believe we are at war. Our president thinks we're at war. It's an invisible enemy. But what that means is we need people to step up as wartime leaders. Now, the uncomfortable part of being a wartime leader for many of us is that it's likely a different style than we've used. It's not our normal leadership style, right? I tend to be a consensus builder. I'm a hugger. I take people around. I listen to everyone. I make thoughtful decisions. This is not the time for that approach. So you need to think about whether you can be a wartime leader with your team at work, with your customers, with your career, with your family, in all aspects of your life. We are at war, and that's not meant to alarm. It's just meant to be real. And this too will pass, hopefully in a few weeks, could be a few months. But if it's a few quarters and you're using the wrong style, it's going to be a challenge. One thing I've observed as I've kind of read about wartime leaders over the past few weeks is they pick one priority. And that is typically to fend off an imminent existential threat, right? The whole goal is to live to fight another day. So if you're getting low on cash in your company or your household, you got one goal, and that is to keep getting that cash coming in. If your whole success is hinged on launching a new product and you're on schedule to launch in a month, and that's the priority, you and your team do every single thing possible, even though we're all working from home. And how do you collaborate? You find a way. That's what wartime leaders do. They find a way. Action is valued over perfection. Very hard if you're a perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Getting this stuff 80-20 in many cases is good enough right now. Normally not. Normally we got to be perfect, 99-1, whatever. Right now, it's about action. This next one's really hard for me to acknowledge because I'm a big culture builder, and I've written a book about it. I believe companies are nothing more than the sum of their people, which is their culture. Unfortunately, in wartime leaders don't put the culture first. They put survival first. They put the imminent existential threat first. And that may mean breaking some glass. It may mean pissing off some people. It may mean losing some friends. But that one priority has to come first. Otherwise, the rest doesn't matter. Once you have that priority and that game plan, being intolerant of deviations from the plan. So it's not time for a lot of debate, not time for a lot of people to have a lot of ideas. Pick a direction, stick with it. Anything that deviates from the plan, you got to say something immediately. And that means it's not a time for consensus, which, again, for some people is just very, very hard. People that are paralyzed right now are going to have a tough time. Your goal is to be paranoid in a healthy sense, healthy paranoia, right? But not paralyzed. That's not going to do any good. So wartime leadership, it's a totally different thing than you may be used to. Now let's keep going with some other things about protecting your current role. Making yourself invaluable, no matter how invaluable you think you might be. When you look at your score, and I'm looking right now at the scores, a lot of scores that are kind of high. Bring your score down by making yourself invaluable. Become a maker or a shaker. Take on extra projects. Volunteer for stuff. I'm not talking about bullshit make work. I'm talking about stuff that can really move the ball forward. Make yourself so intertwined to the business that you are invaluable. You're going to be the last one to go if, God forbid, the company needs to make some adjustments in headcount. There's an expression amongst entrepreneurs like me that, someone like that is the same person that's going to shut the lights off, right? They're the last person. A number of years ago during the 2001 recession, I was chief operating officer of a business, and I executed 6 rounds of layoffs over the course of about 6 months. And, the first few are pretty easy, right? People that you probably should have parted ways with months ago, and it gets harder and harder. And eventually you get to that person who's going to turn the lights off because they're so invaluable. Usually that person is a maker. They make the product, or a shaker. They sell the product. And anything else, these staff functions are often the first to go. Okay, another way to protect yourself is to stay all over your clients. If you're in sales, marketing, if you're in customer success, finance, any part of the business, finding new ways to serve your customers right now, helping them navigate the uncertainty, even sharing with them the strategies that we're talking about right now, listening to them, letting them vent, coming up with solutions for them. Think of yourself as a consultant, no matter what your role is. If your leaders in your business and your investors see that you're tied to your clients, your customers, you're safeguarding your role. Not a good situation to be in right now if you can't even name your company's customers. Okay? So those are different ways to protect your role. Now you also have to think about, just as I explained what being a wartime leader is, you have to think about your manager. Now, you may have a manager. If you're CEO, then your manager is your board or investors. If you've bootstrapped, then it may be your spouse or partner. If you've mortgaged your house, then it's your banker. But we all have a boss. And what your wartime leader wants is for you to be decisive, to take action, to be low maintenance, right? We all have had people on our staff that are really high maintenance. Not a good time to be high maintenance. I don't have the time in a war, which is what we're entering this week, to deal with people on my team who are high maintenance. They got to go. So don't be that person. Your leader, your wartime leader, your boss wants you to ask forgiveness, not permission. So you're going to have to break some glass. You're going to have to get shit done. You're going to have to find a way to be resourceful. And if that means you have to ask some forgiveness after the fact in wartime, and only in wartime, that's actually an admirable quality. Very different than what you might be used to. And then finally, and I think this is all the time, but especially in wartime, bringing your leader, your boss, your investors, solutions, not just problems. Do not approach them with a problem without at least coming up with some proposed solution. We should always do that, right? But now more than ever, your boss, your CEO, your investors, your board are going to have very little patience if you just keep bringing more and more problems without bringing your fair share of solutions. Even if they're not great solutions, come up with something. And you can be really resourceful with using your network. Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water. Type in the chat box if we're making good progress, if this is making sense about how to safeguard your position. I want you to take away that there are some very actionable things that you can do versus sitting around waiting and worrying and being paralyzed. Those are just not good strategies, right? And there's a lot of people, your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers, who are going to do all those things. Okay, let's keep rolling. I've given you some homework assignments for this weekend. I'm going to give you one more. Unless you are independently wealthy or have a rich uncle who just passed away or have a couple of years of cash, I would strongly encourage you to find a way to make some money on the side. That's not advice I give very often. I'm very maniacally focused. I usually tell people stop doing everything else so you can focus on one thing. This is not a great time for that. If your score that we just went through a few minutes ago is kind of high, you actually want to find a way to generate some income. Now, that's not the purpose of tonight's session. Happy to talk with you as much as you want and give you some ideas. I've never met someone that I couldn't think of 20 ways they could make some money on the side. Legal, ethical, and now we have the challenge of doing it from home. But it can be done. Totally can be done. We all have skills. We can all teach. We can all train. We can all create a course. You can write a PDF and sell it. It's a million things. If you're creative and inclined to make some money on the side, I would encourage you to think about doing that. This is a time to do it. And the reason for that is that it is not a great time to look for a job. Now, I'm still going to give you some great job search strategies in a moment that I think are super useful. But I want to preface that by saying that if you're currently working, this is not a great time to think about making a change. The world is in a hunker down mentality. Everyone just is. The hiring managers that you're trying to get in front of are at war. They don't have a lot of time to think about hiring people. That day will come because when you have a recession, the talent market loosens up. What I find is executives use that time to upgrade a lot of the talent on their teams. They swap out C players for B players or B players for A players. That's great. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. Many companies are instituting hiring freezes this week. I was involved in 3 of them this week so far, and we're only at Thursday. And then, of course, how are you going to interview for a job when the person, the VP of marketing, VP of sales, CEO, venture capitalist, can't even meet with you? If they can't meet with you, you have to wonder, are they likely to hire you? Maybe as a short-term project consultant, perhaps, but unlikely that they're going to hire you. So there's just a lot of headwind right now and a lot of noise. And the takeaway from that is, if you have a job, you are better off safeguarding your current role just to ride out this storm. And then we'll be on the other side and everything's going to be great. And we'll go back to where we were, hopefully a tightest job market in 50 years again. And, I'll be here to help you with that too. Now, if you're already looking for a job because you're unemployed, or you're about to be, I'm about to give you some strategies, but please understand that you remember that scene from Titanic, right? Where everyone is scrambling to get onto the lifeboats. And in the Titanic, unlike the cruise ships of today, there were not enough lifeboats for everybody. Now, why they didn't think of that, I don't know. But it was women and children first, and then every man for himself, and they would fight it out. And then many people didn't get in the lifeboats. And you remember the end of the movie. I'm not going to spoil it for you. But I want you to stay on the ship if it's not going down. And if you are adding value, especially if you're a maker or a shaker, that is actually the safest place to be, because the iceberg is out there and you might run into it yourself. Okay, but all that said, let's talk about some job search strategies. I've been a headhunter now for 25 years. So I've given a lot of advice to a lot of professionals on how to make the transition. And I think this advice is actually more relevant now than it's ever been, at least in my lifetime. And this is how I look at it. It's really simple. It's a Venn diagram, or as my kids call it, a Zen diagram. And it's got 3 circles, and we're looking for the intersection right in the middle. Circle number 1. What are you the top 5% at? If you read my book called Recruit Rockstars, you'll know that I define a rock star as someone who is in the top 5% of their discipline. Steve Jobs used to say these people were game changers. They were 50 to 100 times better than your average employee. I believe all of us have a gift. Hopefully you have found it. If not, now's not a great time to find it, but do some soul searching this weekend and get to it. And if you don't know what your gift is, ask others who have worked with you and say, what am I really good at? And that is circle number 1. What are you? And I don't mean good or above average. I mean exceptional. It may be 1 or 2 things. That's circle number 1. Circle number 2. What do you love the most? What do you genuinely love? And I'm not referring to your family in this context. Do you love, technology? Do you love selling? Do you love animals? Whatever it is, that's your second circle. Your third circle, which is probably the most challenging in this economy, is how can you create value? What will people pay you to do? And that's a crucial one, right? Because you could be really good at, origami, and you love origami, but right now, no one's going to pay you to be a professional origami maker. Not going to happen. You might be a great writer of press releases, and you love writing press releases, but no one's doing press releases right now. So probably not a great place to be, right? So you're going to have to do this in the short term, but this is the Venn diagram I always give to the same people over and over. I've used it now for 25 years. Your goal is to find the target in the middle. When you do that, the heavens part, the storm becomes calm, and you're able to focus on certain industries, certain companies in that industry, and certain roles. It's important during this time to remember Maslow's triangle. If you're not familiar with the concept, basically it says that we all start at the bottom to make sure those needs are taken care of before we are even interested in climbing the ladder to other needs. Well, 20 days ago, before we were arm wrestling for toilet paper, we were at the top, right? Worried about becoming everything we wanted to be and our respect and our recognition and how our boss treated us. And now we are hoping that we can get fresh air and water and toilet paper and food. And it's staggering to me how it's changed in 20 days, but I'm sure you're equally staggered, and that's not the point of this discussion. The point of this slide is just to indicate that if you're focused on these top things when everyone else is focused on these bottom things, you're going to have a tough time finding a job, finding a role, finding a home. The closer to the bottom you can be right now, the better in meeting people's needs. And so I put together a list of industries, and I can send this to you if you like, so you don't have to scramble to write it down, that I believe are going to do very well over the next 2-year period. We could pick some random examples. Home entertainment, pretty obvious. We're all going to be using that. Consumer food, it's never been stronger. Senior services, people are still getting older. We got a lot of people to take care of. There's going to be a lot of legal issues that come out of this tsunami, a lot of accounting issues, online education, as I'm finding out with my kids. The list is endless. So to think that there's no opportunities is just crazy, but they may not be the same ones that existed 20 days ago. So think about the industries and think about within your industry and within your company where those opportunities lie. Now, if you have to look right now, which is fine, don't make the same mistakes everyone makes. Let's go through some of those now. Applying online for a job is an absolute waste of time. I can't tell you the last time I hired someone who applied online. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to look online for job postings, right? If you find a job posting that was posted yesterday, that's a company that probably needs that person, right? Amazon announced yesterday they're hiring 100,000 warehouse workers. Now, I'm not encouraging you to apply for that job, but I am saying if you're interested, don't apply online. Bypass HR, find the hiring manager and go direct to that person. And that is networking. And if you can't do that, it's going to be a tough period. Don't ignore the elephant in the room. As you approach people, if your company is shutting down or winding down or you were laid off, don't dodge the fact that we're in the biggest healthcare crisis in our history. People are going to understand that companies are having a tough time. So just say it like it is. But don't expect to make a change of function, industry, and level all at the same time. That's hard to pull off the trifecta in great times. In wartime, maybe you'll be able to pivot one of those. So if you want to stay in the same industry, you may have to be more flexible on function, right? So if you want to stay in your industry and you've been in marketing, you may have to go to sales. Or if you were in legal, you may have to take over HR. Or if you want to stay in the same function, you may have to be open to switching industries. So you get the point, right? You have to, flexibility right now is hugely important. I believe it's an absolute waste of time right now trying to get to strangers. These are, if you go back to this, right? If there's room in that boat, those strangers are thinking about who can I bring into the boat, people that I've worked with before. And I want you to do the same thing, okay? And so to do that, stop wasting time with strangers and invest your time with people that already know you. And I'll give you the key to doing that in a second. Also, don't send a resume. Don't send a resume. I know that sounds strange, but I get a million unsolicited resumes. I'll get probably 50 from this call. And it doesn't make sense until you know what the person is looking for. And then you produce a customized resume called a mirror resume that takes 30 minutes to do, but it looks exactly like the job description, right? So you're taking your resume and you're removing things and moving things and reprioritizing things and bolding things so that when I look at my job description and I look at your resume, I say, oh my God, I have found the perfect person. Just takes 30 minutes. Most people, I'd say 99% of candidates don't take that time. They just send their resume and they say, well, I invested time in my resume and I don't care. The better time to spend is making sure that that audience looks at your resume and says, oh my God, like she dropped from the heavens. This is my perfect match for this role. So since we're not going to spend time with strangers and we're not going to spend time online looking for jobs right now, those days will come back. We're going to tap into our network. And this is, dig your well before you're thirsty. I hope you dug your well. I'll bet you dug your well more than you think, but you got to rack your brain this weekend and start making a list. Literally making a list. Every manager you've had, whether you like them or not, every mentor you've had, official or unofficial, every peer that you've worked with, people at your level, maybe from other divisions, investors that invested in your company, but they also invest in other companies, board members, customers that you have served and just had a great relationship with, vendors, on the other hand. I guarantee if you spend time this weekend on this list, it'll be over 100 people. This is a far better use of your time right now. If you want to recession-proof your career and look for a role in the face of this tsunami that's coming, find people who already know you, who already trust you, who already like you, who already know the quality of your work, and who potentially have some life rafts with open seats. I'm not saying that to be alarmist. I'm not a hunker down person. I'm not a settle person, but that is a far better strategy right now than talking to strangers. So here's how I would go about it. I would list out that 100 people or 200 people. I think they say that each of us knows about 150 people, right? But many of us have 30,000 LinkedIn contacts. Go through them, but be honest, right? Who knows you? Who loves you? And when I say love, meaning they'll take your call, right? And who is in a position to hire you? What good is it if they know you and they think you're great, but they're 3 levels beneath you? They probably can't hire you, right? So you score these any way you want. I use 1 to 3. Let's keep it simple. You add them all up. You prioritize this tops down. That is your target list right now. Your target list is not spending all day and all night on LinkedIn looking at job listings where you don't know the hiring manager, they don't know you. Those things go into a dark black hole anyway. This is the best, far better use of your time. Prioritize your network. Let's talk about LinkedIn profiles. I'm seeing a bunch of questions about LinkedIn profiles. Far more important than your resume. Far more important than your resume. The problem is they get 6 seconds on average. As an executive recruiter, I look at them all day long, as does my research team, and the average gets 6 seconds. Most LinkedIn profiles don't pass the 6-second test. What 6 seconds means? It means your LinkedIn profile needs to quantify your achievements. Quantify. Grew sales by X, reduced cost by X, signed X new customers, launched X new products. That's quantifying your accomplishments. It lets someone know that you were there. Okay. Achievements. Most people on their LinkedIn profile will have all their jobs and all their titles, and then they go on to put a job description. Well, the hiring manager knows very well what that job is. They know. We know. What we want to see is the achievements, right? 2 or 3 or 4 major achievements that you accomplished during that time. And I don't really care about the job from 22 years ago. A little less relevant right now. I usually focus on the past 8 years, but take it for what it's worth. How you create value. When someone, a headhunter like me, or a head of HR, or a CEO, or a venture capitalist, or a private equity investor looks at that LinkedIn for 6 seconds, they need to take away how you create value. You're writing your LinkedIn profile for them, not for you. It's not a autobiography. No one cares, especially in this time. I promise you some tough love. It's how you create value. And for God's sakes, put a professional headshot on. Now, until last Wednesday, I would have said, pay someone $500 and get a professional headshot. You can no longer do that. So you're going to have the best iPhone or iPad camera in your household, and you're going to get dressed, not with a tie, but with something human, and have someone in your family take 30 pictures of you until you find the right one. Don't just take one picture. Take 30, take 50, take 100, and pick the best one. And that is a headshot like you're seeing me right now. Not really far away, not really super up close and scary, not with your dog, some of the headshots are crazy. And the reason for that is, despite all the bias and all the other issues that you'll hear, people want to engage with a human, and the only human part of a LinkedIn profile is your photo. And so many LinkedIn profiles don't even have photos. So don't forget that. Okay, let's keep going. I'm going to take a break for a sec. Type in the chat box if this is making sense. I see that we are behind time. I promised you a lot of content tonight. We are in the home stretch. I can promise you we're going to be a couple minutes over the hour, but I do hope it's useful. Type in the chat box yes or no if you're getting some stuff out of this and if it's useful. And let's keep going. Most people are saying yes. Okay, great. Have these two things ready at all times. SAR, SAR, SAR. Situation, action, result. For every job you've ever held, you should be able to clearly articulate a situation, an action, and a result. What did you step into? Was it a turnaround? Was it a startup? What is this? Was it kind of just momentum, sustained growth? What were the key actions you took? And then what were the results? Situation, action, result. If you are 50 and you've had 8 jobs over the course of your career, you should be able to say, I stepped into this situation, I took these 3 actions, and here were the results. Even if the results were bad, know your numbers and know what the results were. It's okay to have this written out, by the way. Bring it with you to an interview. You don't have to memorize it, but so many individuals, so many candidates can't tell me, or leaders, those basic 3 things: the situation, action, result. That's how you frame every story in an interview, in a conversation. Of course, second is references. Get that together before you need it. Don't wait till the last second. Now's a great time, especially if you're looking for your next role. The number, I would say the more the better. I get some candidates who give me 30, and man, that conveys to me they have a lot of confidence in their ability. There's a lot of people that are willing to go to bat for them. If you have a tough time coming up with 3, you're going to have a tough time. Speaking of interviews, video interviews are where it's at. So I don't mean recorded videos. Your next job interview, I would bet a good steak dinner, it's going to be a video interview, because we're not going to be leaving home for a while. And I've been doing video interviews for years, and it's phenomenal. It's not as good as in person, but it's pretty good. Far better than a phone interview. So there's some key things you got to do. You got to check your technology before the appointed time. If the interview is at 3 o'clock, don't get on at 2:59 hoping that Zoom or Skype is going to work, because it's not. Try it the day before, try it an hour before. You get one shot. And if it doesn't work and you're 10 minutes late, that hiring manager is already frustrated, even if it's not your fault. It's very unfair, but that's the way of the world. We don't live in a fair world. Make sure you free up all the bandwidth in your house. Right now, your kids are on their iPads playing, you're downloading videos, your roommate is on YouTube, and you're trying to maximize your bandwidth. So either pay Comcast more to increase your bandwidth, or get everything off during the time of that interview. It's extra hard to be engaging. As I'm sitting here talking to you on video, I'm doing my best to be engaging. Now, that's hard for me, but that means eye contact, that means hand motion, that means energy. Very hard to do on video, right, where you're just framed versus in person. But you have to jump through the camera to the interviewer, whoever it is, and make an emotional engagement, a personal connection. Super hard, but you got to be ready. You also got to be ready by thinking about what you're going to wear. I'm not going to give you fashion advice, but I interview candidates all day, every day, a lot of them on video. Some show up in a suit, kind of weird to be at home sitting in a suit. Others show up in a torn t-shirt. I don't get it. Others are right in the middle. So think about what you're going to wear. And most importantly, mock interview with someone you trust. Do not get on the interview for the very first time. And good luck, right? It's like, have some mock interviews just like you did way back in college. Okay, while we're at it, let's talk about working at home. We're all going to be working at home for the next couple of weeks or months or quarters. I think quarters. This is not how you work at home. Prior to last year, I was CEO of an online wellness company, 100% virtual, but 70 employees. We all worked from home. And we would ask some of our employees to send us photos of their work. And this was one of them. Like literally, they don't even have a desk. You need a desk in your place. I don't care if it's a studio. Get a desk. You can go to Amazon. You can have IKEA deliver it. Get a simple desk. Get a door with 2 stands on either side. Get a comfortable chair. You need to separate your work and your life right now. It's hugely important from just a sheer mental and attitude perspective. Not to mention figuring out how you're going to handle the 4 deadly distractions of your TV, which should not be off when you're searching for a job, your fridge, which is super dangerous for stress eaters like us, And how are you going to handle your kids and your dog? You're going to have to come up with some ground rules. I'll leave that to you. I'm coming up with my own. Okay. If you are currently unemployed, set your ego aside and file for benefits now. The line at some of these offices is now 3 hours wait. They space them out 6 feet because you can't breathe on each other. So it's only going to get worse. And I fear some of these benefits offices are going to close over the next month, and you're going to have a really tough time. So set your ego aside, get the money that you're entitled to. You've been paying into it. Get the money now. I'm going to talk about your health for a moment, and you'll wonder, why is Jeff talking about health? It's because you can't panic. You need a calm head about you, and that means you got to take care of yourself. I care. I genuinely care, because you can't look for a job if you're not healthy. And I'm not referring just to coronavirus. I'm referring to everything else. Your mental health right now is super important. Very hard to conduct a successful job search if your head is not in the game. What I sadly anticipate is going to happen over coming weeks and months is that we're going to have the highest level of depression, anxiety, stress, isolation of Americans that we've ever had, especially amongst extroverts who derive their energy from other people, from being around other people. If you start to experience this, you have to get help. Now, I'm not a shrink. I've had my fair share of them, but don't wait. Get help. And the good news is there is amazing online therapy, BetterHelp, and a ton of these other companies. You can get video help just like this from a therapist. Huge help, as is some things that I swear by: yoga, meditation, sleep. Get your sleep. Have a regular schedule, right? Even though we're working at home, we got to get up, we got to get dressed, we got to shave, we got to shower. It's so tempting to treat this like spring break. This is not a rehearsal. This is a tsunami. And that means having a regular schedule to give yourself some certainty in what is about to become a very uncertain and slightly depressing world. Control what you can control. I have been practicing gratitude. And I know that sounds very cheesy, but I know that I have it better than some right now. There's a roof over my head. I'm probably not going to miss any meals anytime soon. And, I really feel for a lot of waiters and waitresses who are soon to be out of work. So gratitude is a great way to keep your mental health. Your physical health is also important. Our bodies were not designed to sit all day. And so what I recommend, and everyone says we can do this, is get outside and go for a walk. I've been doing 1 or 2 a day. Great thinking time, great to clear your head. The best way to structure your time, perhaps, is what we did at Retrofit, which was work 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, or work 50 minutes, take a 10-minute break. But every hour, you got to be taking about 10% of that time. Get away from the desk, get away from the phone, hopefully go outside, play with your dog, talk to the kids. You got to get a break. And that break can't turn into a 2-hour break. So we're near the end. I'm going to give you some more information, but we're getting close, and I understand everyone is nervous. I'm nervous too. I think that's a very natural reaction. We are at war, but you can't afford to get paralyzed. It's not going to do you any good. It's not going to do your family any good. It's not going to do your company any good. And if you have a team, even though they can't see you because they're in their homes and you're leading and managing them remotely, they know when you're nervous. They're looking to you right now to be the rock. If you seize up, if you freeze, they're not going to know what to do. And they're taking their cue from you. So it's calm under pressure, right? It's wartime leadership. That's what you have to practice with your team at work, which ironically will deliver results and is the best way to safeguard your job in the first place, is to continue to deliver results. I came up with an idea over the past week, and I have a way of giving you a bit of an unfair advantage, right? Because a lot of people are going to be asking a lot of these questions. We've covered a lot in the past hour, and I have a way to give you an ace up your sleeve, right? To really nail down, what is my elevator pitch? How do I represent myself and explain myself? to nail your LinkedIn profile, which is all important right now. It's the very first place that headhunters go. To really understand the opposite side of hiring and understand what's the straight scoop, get some no bullshit advice, I think is incredibly valuable. And frankly, just to have a sounding board, right, who can help through this process, through this phase, and maybe even help you with mock interviews. So it's not normally something that I do, but I've come up with an idea. I'm not a career coach. That's not what I do. I'm a consigliere, right? I'm a headhunter. I'm retained by CEOs to advise them on hiring talent. That's what they pay me to do. And I have the good fortune to be able to do it. And I seem to be okay at it, but I can use a lot of that information perhaps to help you. So I've come up with an idea, and it's called Headhunter Edge. And it's basically designed to give people an unfair advantage in what is now a very uncertain world. I don't plan to do this for long, but as long as it's helpful to people, because I want to get this out to as many people as I can, that's what I'm starting to do. So the way Headhunter Edge works is you'll have a live one-on-one video session with me, just you and me, the two of us, not some team member, not a staff member. It's me. It'll be recorded. You'll get a copy of it. You can watch it as many times as you want, and we can use that time to talk about anything you want with regard to your career. So if you think that could be helpful to you, that's what I'm calling Headhunter Edge. And the goal is to give you an unfair advantage over people that can't get a headhunter to talk to them, which right now is proving to be pretty hard. The second piece of it is to give you unlimited access to me via email, because obviously, I only have so many hours in the day. So any kind of questions, any kind of advice, anything career related, only career related, unlimited as much as you want, right? And I am super responsive. Obviously, I live on email. So we start with a 1 hour video to get a game plan, to talk through this stuff, to meet, and then from there forward, unlimited access to me on the follow through and to hold you accountable and help you overcome obstacles. And it's not some team, it's not some junior kid. You get me. It's me. And I'll do as many as I can. We can use the time any way that you want, right? We can identify specific opportunities or industries or companies. I can point out your biggest risks where I think you're exposed. I'll be your sounding board. You can tell from this session that I'm no bullshit, which isn't for everybody. I can give you some pretty good clarity on how CEOs and recruiters are going to perceive you, and help you create a plan. And we can use that time any way that you want. What I won't do is wallow, right? I'm not a wallower, and frankly, I don't have time for it. So I hope you won't wallow, but I'm not going to let you. If you want to work with me, great, but I'm not going to do it. So it's called Headhunter Edge. Maybe it'll be useful to you. Maybe it won't. I don't know. How much is it? It's $500 and then $50 per month. You can cancel anytime for any reason. I don't care. I won't even ask you why you're canceling. So we get the 1 hour session. It's $500. You get 60 minutes of my time. We'll cover anything you want. I'll probably ask you some questions in advance so we can get the most out of the time. And then it's $50 a month after that for unlimited access to me on email. You find your next job, you cancel right away. Don't care. Totally up to you. Okay. So that's what I'm calling Headhunter Edge. I think there's some pretty good return for that money. Pretty hard for me to believe that I can't help you increase your compensation, because I can help you negotiate, of course. I can tell you what the company's going to tell you and how to get around it. The advice that I can give you will probably shorten the time it'll take you to find that role. So if I can shorten it by a couple of days or weeks, that kind of covers the cost of Headhunter Edge. And I can certainly save you a lot of time spinning your wheels, because I will tell you in a 1 hour session, as we go through your strategy, what's likely to be an absolute waste of time and what's likely to work. So I can save you a lot of time from spinning your wheels. If you're not sure, you can Google me. I'm not going to belabor that, but I've got all this gray hair for a reason. I've hired and fired and laid off and built companies a lot, and you just kind of see the same movie over and over again. While I have not seen this particular movie, I've seen other movies like it, and I think that could be useful. So it's totally up to you. You can take the stuff we've talked about. You can go it alone. Not going to hurt my feelings. Or hopefully have me in your corner, kind of an unfair advantage. That's the Headhunter Edge. So if you're interested, you can sign up. I opened it up this afternoon. You go to headhunteredge.com and you can sign up. It's going to be first come, first served. I'm only going to do a few sessions per day. So you can go ahead and sign up, and I will email you and we'll figure out when we're going to meet. I'll work evenings, weekends, whatever I can. I'm got nowhere else to go. But, I don't know what the demand's going to be. I was crushed or kind of surprised by how many people signed up for the webinar tonight. So I don't know how many people are going to sign up for this, but I'm throwing it out there. So with that, I want to open it up to questions. I promise I'd stay on as long as you want. I'll give you my best thinking. Type in the chat box your question, and we'll go to it, and hopefully we can make an impact together. And if you're interested in checking out Headhunter Edge, that's the website. You can go to headhunteredge.com. So with that, type your questions, and let's get to it. Okay, first one. What do I do about distractions if I'm on a Zoom video? It's a good question. I had this happen actually this morning. I was on one. I think people are going to be very understanding during this period. I think you're going to get a lot of empathy. We're all going to develop a totally different sense of humanity real fast over the next few weeks and months. I think our politicians have, and I think that's going to flow through. So if your dog barks, if your baby cries, I think you're going to get a break. If you're dressed like a doofus, which is completely in your control, or you don't have a desk, I don't care if it's in the bathroom, right? So you can just focus. That stuff in your control. Focus on what you can control. But I think you're going to get a decent amount of leeway from people. I know I'm interviewing candidates to this day. I'm working on searches right now, and obviously I'm giving them a break, right? If there's a kid crying in the background, or I see the kid, studying, I understand. Okay, next question. What do I think is going to happen in private equity and venture capital? Great question. I've been reading a lot about this. A lot of the search work I do is in private equity, venture capital. So it's a good news, bad news. There is a ton, $3 trillion, last I checked, on the sidelines, meaning VC and PE firms that have that much money that they want to put to work, and they can't give it back easily. So it's a matter of time. The challenge right now is that they can't even meet with prospective investments because we can't leave the house. So it's quickly grinding to a halt in terms of new investments. But there are tens of thousands of companies already that are funded by PE and VC, and they're not about to go out of business. Those investors don't take their money back. So I think it's a pause on private equity and venture capital, but it's going to be back bigger than ever. I'm still very optimistic. Okay, let's go to the next one. There's a lot of questions. Would I work with people who are unemployed? Of course. So, any chance you'll pass along your slides? Sure, I'll send you the slides. What would you recommend for following up on jobs for which you are already a candidate this week and next? Certainly follow up, but don't follow up saying, "Hi, I'm just following up." That's kind of useless. So find any reason to give news when you do that follow-up. Hey, John, just want to touch base. I know we said we were going to talk this week. I just want to let you know I just signed a huge new client. Or I wanted to let you know about this, that we finally launched the new product. Or, I've rallied I put together this framework for leading my team from home, and I thought it would be useful. Or I found this video that someone did about how to manage remote teams, and I wanted to pass it on to you. Find some reason to touch base other than just, how you doing? You already know how they're doing. They're not doing well. So that's what I would recommend. Next question. Is it good to send a resume to a VC or PE firm? It is an absolute waste of time to even click the send button unless it is through a mutual connection that you have with that VC or PE firm. They rarely look at unsolicited candidates, and over the next few months, they're going to be besieged at a time when they're focused on managing their portfolio companies. So I don't think that's a very useful strategy. Your company, my company is offering a temporary pay cut. Take it or find something new. Take it. I didn't hesitate to say, take it. You're going to see this by next Friday in so many companies in so many industries. I've seen this movie before. Companies are going to hesitate to part ways with people because we don't know how long this issue is going to last. It may last a month. Companies don't want to shed all their workers. All those workers leave. Now they got to rehire them back, but the competition has grabbed them. The company has a real problem. So they're going to want to have their cake and eat it too, which means if we can just reduce our burn, we can keep everyone on board, or maybe almost everyone. If you're offered a pay cut, take it. The second reason is it is 10 times easier statistically to find your next role when you have a role. Number one, because of the optics, which I know is very unfair. But number two, because you can sleep at night, because you're not hungry, because you can afford toilet paper, because you can live. I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth. It sounds so caveman, but the next couple of months, it's kind of caveman city. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If your company is offering you a pay cut, take it and find something new. What about people who are already in the market and over 50? Those are excuses. I don't know. I would need to know the situation, but there's a lot of people on the market. There's a lot of people over 50 that land jobs every day. Age has nothing to do with it. What advice do I have for someone who can create or develop wartime leaders? Man, that's a brilliant question. Best question of the night so far. I said earlier, develop this weekend a way to make some income. If for whatever reason you have the ability to teach others how to develop wartime leaders or how to be a wartime leader, I'm not trained on how to develop people that. I've just been doing a lot of reading the past 2 weeks and wanted to share it with you. But if you are the wartime leader coach, or you're able, because of your organizational expertise, to do that, or you're a personal trainer, or maybe you led a war, maybe you were in Iraq and led a squadron for 2 years. Oh my God. You can monetize that in a heartbeat right now with online teaching, with YouTube, etc. I've been working remotely for 8 years. Nobody cares about background distractions if you let them know beforehand. Yeah, you can let them know beforehand. That's a great point. Right now, I don't even think you need to let them know because everyone's working at home. So I think you're going to get a big pass, over, like I said, over the next few months. But that's a great point from someone. How important are 30, 60, 90-day plans for interviews? That's a great question. I advise my clients not to focus on asking a candidate, what is your 30, 60, or 90-day plan? Because I believe a candidate doesn't know enough about the situation to develop a plan that's worth the paper it's written on. Despite that advice that I give people, a lot of interviewers ask that question. So I suppose having put some thought into it is better than nothing. Even if it's just something to slide across the table, it kind of checks the box. I don't particularly value them, but I know a lot of people do. But it is a good reminder that for every interview you have, and I know this sounds crazy, I've read this and I believe it with my heart. If you invest 10 hours preparing for that interview, you will out-interview any other candidate because you will know so much about the company, which right now is so easy to research. You'll know the company's issues, their financials, their leadership team, their competitors. Most people, when I interview them, their preparation is pathetic. And when I realize the person hasn't worked in 6 months, I'm like shocked. So that's a great guideline. 10 hours of prep for every interview hour that you have. Next question. I'm a product manager who does some making and some shaking. I like that. Are product managers generally seen as maker shakers or something else? Depends on the product manager. I have met product managers. I came up through product management who are amazing makers and shakers. They lead the engineering team. They work with the sales team. They know how to make money. They sniff out opportunity from customers and find a way to extract value from customers. I have met product managers who are paper pushers, who are almost useless, who almost inhibit progress, if you can imagine that. So if you're a brand manager, product manager, it's a great question asked by Randy, because it can go either way. It's really up to you. You know where I would wind up on that one. Let's go to the next one. I agree that a compelling LinkedIn profile is super important. Do you have an example of one that you can pass on? Sure, I can send you some. I can send you one. But I gave you some guidelines earlier. Quantify the results. Super short and brief, right? Get 6 seconds. Great headshot. It's not that hard. How do I reply to the overqualified objection? You shouldn't be getting that objection. Because before you send a resume, before you have that discussion, you should be learning everything about the role, everything that's needed in that role. And when you create your resume and have your meeting and your interview on video, probably, you're going to only talk about the things that are relevant. You're going to leave out the extraneous stuff. Now, if you're up here and the role is down here, yeah, you're probably going to hear that. But if it's close, it shouldn't be an issue. If it's disguised as overqualified and what they're really saying is you're too expensive, then you should be talking about your flexibility on compensation. Or I'm willing to take this base, which is at their level, but I would love some incentive bonus if I can deliver X, Y, Z, or stock, or whatever it may be. So find out what the real underlying objection is. If it's just age discrimination, then you're talking to the wrong person. You might as well move on. How are CEOs viewing workers in their late 40s, early 50s? A lot of my clients are CEOs, and we love candidates who are in their late 40s, early 50s, because it depends on the role, but they have experience. They've led projects. They've led teams. They've led organizations. No issue. Again, if you're getting that as an objection, you're talking to someone who's practicing age discrimination and you're wasting your time. You might as well move on. I'm a career business development person. Home office, tech savvy, dressed for work. We're all remote office, but I'm very skilled at. Should I try to leverage that? I don't really understand the question. So maybe you can re-ask that one. Sorry. LinkedIn, it keeps indicating that I'm in the top 10% of applicants for a job. How do I make that a reality? That's a bullshit algorithm that looks at matches keywords. It has nothing to do with reality. As a headhunter, I pay no attention to it. You shouldn't either. Is there still a power in cover letters? No. A long cover letter that basically regurgitates everything in your resume or LinkedIn is a waste of your time. It's insulting and it goes in the trash. What is very impactful is a 3 to 5 sentence paragraph that does not include your resume or your LinkedIn, just to get the dialogue going, just to open up a discussion. Once you do that, you want them to say, hey, shoot me your resume or LinkedIn. Now you got something, right? But don't just send your resume unsolicited because LinkedIn says you're in the top 10% of applicants. I need to grab some water and then we'll keep going. Great questions, guys. How do we find great UK and European-based startups that are launching a US office and seeking a head of sales? I would say don't waste your time right now. I don't think over the next 3 months, any UK company or European-based company is going to be focused on launching the US office. If you want to ask me again in 3 to 6 months, 12 months, happy to have that discussion. I think right now, absolute waste of time. I'm in a job search, received an email this Monday to set up a telephone interview. No response since. How long should I wait to pester? Certainly not every day, maybe every other day, then stretch it out to every 3-4 days. You have to understand in this environment, stuff's dropping left and right. So the best answer to that, I hate to say it, is no different than sales, which is to fill your pipeline, stuff your pipeline with meetings, calls, meetings, so that something breaks through. At the same time, I had a good first round telephone interview, but no follow-up yet. Same answer, right? People are trying to buy toilet paper, trying to get their kids set up on e-learning, trying to get their wits about them in a job. It's going to take a little bit of time, right, for people to kind of reorient to this new normal. What key industries should we additionally focus on? So I shared a list earlier. I'm not going to go back to that, but if you want, you'll get a copy of the deck and a copy of the video, and I listed out about 30 or 40. Do I provide introductions to PE or VC firms for companies looking for capital? No, I don't. And if you're raising capital right now, you're probably wasting time. Most VC and PE clients of mine have said that they can't even meet with management teams, so they can't conceive of how they're going to write a check without meeting the management team. So you're probably going to need to find another strategy. Do you think we could have a bifurcated economy geographically? Say 2 months from now, there are a certain amount of deaths in certain areas. Will businesses move to the healthiest location? I'm not a doctor. That's a great question. I believe that work from home and working virtually is about to crack open in the biggest way. But I can't anticipate what's going to happen. God forbid that actually happens. I just don't know. It's not like a nuclear fallout where it's going to be inherently dangerous to live in one area. From what I've read and studied, and hopefully you have too, we will solve this challenge. We will come up with a vaccine or treatment, and fortunately that will take care of things, but that could be a year. Are there particular jobs that are easy to apply for to work remotely, such as business analyst? Yeah, sure. There are some jobs that are easier to do remotely. There are some websites. If you send me an email, I can send you 3 or 4 top websites, or you can Google them, that just focus on remote work. Not hard to find them. But I would just use those as leads. I would not post your profile like on Upwork. What happens is it's a race to the bottom. You get companies that just sort by price. And if you're new on those platforms, or you haven't done a lot of remote work, you don't have a lot of reviews, it's just going to be a race to the bottom on price. So you could use them for leads, and you can use them to find job listings, but I wouldn't be posting my profile. What is your perspective on firms hiring consultants or contractors right now? Is this attractive to people? Yes. I think we're going to see a massive increase in companies that need to manage their burn rate, but still have to get shit done. And so the way to get through that will be hiring a consultant or a contractor for a week or a month or a day or part-time. If you have a particular expertise in those 3 Venn diagram, that 3 Venn diagram, hang out your shingle now, right? Make your target list, that same list we talked about. People that know you, love you, will take your call, right? And tell them what you've done. Don't waste your time building a website for the next month. Don't waste your time on Upwork, where it's just going to be a race to the bottom on price. Spending hours on resume, please elaborate. I know candidates that literally will do 30 versions of their resume, wordsmithing, and resumes don't even get looked at anymore. Most people are going to look at your LinkedIn profile to make a decision on whether they want to spend time with you. And if they do, your resume doesn't matter. So I'm not saying don't spend time on it. Get it right? But if you're going to spend time, the place to spend time is in that personalized mirror resume, which is the mirror image of the job listing, right? That's where you should invest the time. So when I look at that resume, I'm like, oh my God, this is the perfect person. Okay, next question. 20 days ago, you said 20 days ago, companies were competing heavily to attract top talent. You also provided a list of industries that you believe will thrive. Do you believe there's a subset of these industries that will be enlightened and still pursue top talent now versus hunker down? Yes. Look, the dust has to settle. The dust hasn't even started yet. The dust is going to start over the next 2 weeks. And there's going to be more waves of panic. And I don't mean panic in the streets. I just mean a difficulty focusing on work. Then that dust will settle. New industries will emerge, new sub-industries. I've already seen companies pop up in the past week that are marketing tests, legitimate tests for coronavirus, helping companies adapt, tech guys who are popping up to help people work at home and handle their tech support issues. I mean, it creates all kinds of new opportunities. I'll send you that list of industries and sub-industries. Yeah, there's going to be no shortage of opportunity, but there's also going to be a list of industries that are going to have a tough time. Hotels, cruise ships are very obvious examples. What do I think of Wonderlic tests and the companies that use them? It's a very, very complex question. Wonderlic test is an online assessment. I personally don't use online assessments. I've tried them all. The reason I don't recommend them is I have yet to find many leaders who will have candidates take them and then actually listen to the results. They usually just look the other way, in which case I ask them, why are you spending all this time and money on online assessments? So if you're serious about it, you're really going to use it. If you're a hiring manager, great. Otherwise, I think you're wasting time and money. And by the way, there's a lot of really crappy online assessment tests out there too. If you're a candidate and you're being asked to do it, you don't have a choice. So do it, right? You can't, it's not optional. Do you really think there are going to be good jobs out there in the next year? And what is the impact from the paradigm shift? I don't have a better crystal ball than you have, but I absolutely think there are going to be good jobs out there. I think there are still good jobs out there, but the bar is going to go up, right? You're going to have to demonstrate that you're in that top 5%. You're going to have to demonstrate that maybe you're a little bit more flexible on comp, right? I've seen compensation increase more in the past year than in my 25 years of headhunting. And so supply and demand, comp is probably going to start coming down. So being flexible, being reasonable, not waiting for the perfect situation. Is it still feasible to target the hidden job markets? That's how you find the hidden job market, but not through strangers. Make that list of everyone you know, sort it tops down like I explained earlier, and let them know that your company is winding down next Friday, or you have been laid off and this coronavirus is horrible, but it's made you a lot more flexible to consulting work or to taking something that maybe you did 5 years ago, and you speak with every single person on that list. And that is the hidden job market, because they haven't posted a job, but they might say, you know what, we actually need some help on that. And I can only give you 20 hours a week. Will you take it? Your answer is yes. So yes, the hidden job market still exists, but don't waste time with strangers. As an internal recruiter for a retail company, I'm proposing the idea of providing career advice for our customers impacted by this. We're implementing a hiring freeze. So I'm wondering if I feel this idea or similar ones could add value and build long-term brand affinity. Yeah, anything you can do right now. It's a brilliant idea. Anything you can do to help your clients, to help people, much like Headhunter Edge is all about, right? It's not something I launched until last week. It's not something I thought of until last Thursday. And I've been at this 25 years. So come up with new ideas, test them, iterate. If you can add value, people are hopefully going to remember that later. Am I optimistic about the employment situation coming out of this, and what new skills will be needed? I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm not a great person to ask. I've started 4 companies. Entrepreneurs by definition are optimists. So yes, I'm optimistic. I think unemployment is going to increase very quickly. I think a lot of people are going to get caught flat-footed. It's not going to be you, because you invested time on this tonight. Hopefully you'll do some of the things we talked about. But yes, I'm optimistic. But the jobs are going to move. They're going to be in different places, different industries, different skill sets. Do I like green screens for background on video interviews? No, I think it's kind of cheesy. It just looks over-rehearsed. Interviewing is this bullshit mating ritual process, and anything that makes it look more staged and more fake is not good. You want to be as authentic as possible. I'm in the executive search industry. What's the best strategy to manage through this crisis with clients? It's a broad question. A lot of headhunters have been asking me this. I would get very, very close to your clients, find out what crises they're facing, and see if you can find a way to help them solve it. That's my best advice. I get asked this by candidates. Is it bad to have the header in your LinkedIn looking for X job? Yes, I think that's kind of silly. The people who are looking for your LinkedIn don't care that you're looking for a job. What they care about is that you can create value, and deliver X, Y, and Z for them. So think like a marketer and write copy that appeals to the target customer and saying, I'm looking for a job or seeking new opportunities. There's nothing wrong with being an active job seeker. That's not what I'm saying. Don't take that away. What I'm saying is think like a marketer, think and write what your prospective customer wants to read. I was planning on making the next move internally. My mentor wants to help me. Last time we talked in February, he told me he'll get back to me. What do I do now? Find a good reason to connect with him? Yeah, it's no different than if he was on the outside at another company, right? The world has changed in the past 20 days, and that was in February. So it's been 48 days. Yeah, you got to start from scratch. Find a way to make yourself invaluable at your company. How do I find good headhunters to help me with my search? You don't. Headhunters are retained by companies, not by candidates. And so you're absolutely wasting your time approaching headhunters right now because you don't pay them. They're clients, the companies pay them. But more importantly, their hands are full. So not a good strategy. I had a company reach out, and after a conversation, we were off on salary. I told them I could be flexible. I never heard from them again. Should I reach out? Sure, reach out again. A lot of companies are going to realize that a lot of candidates are a whole lot more flexible than they were 30 days ago. I had an example yesterday with an executive who I knew what their comp was 30 days ago. When they told me what they're willing and able to work for, it was almost half. And this was a top 5% performer. So sure, go back. Next question. Any recommendations for platforms where you can offer counsel, toolkits, processes? Sure, there's a million online platforms. If you send me an email, I'm sure I can come up with a few. With your comments on outsourced work increasing, would you see opportunities with companies like Axiom increasing? Sure. I think this is going to be a time when a lot of companies start outsourcing anything that's not core, anything they can get off the books, any people they can jettison and turn them into a variable cost instead of a fixed cost. Yeah, I think that's a good strategy. Or start that company if you can't find one. I'm a product manager. Can you recommend good places to find contract work? Product manager is a tough one. It's rarely set up in a contract work kind of way. There's a million places online to find opportunities, but you need to find recent ones. Finding something that was posted 2 months ago is a waste of time. But if you're on LinkedIn, there's all different ways to search and sort, as you know, including there's a checkbox, right? Contract work or consulting work. And if you see something posted this week, sure. What is the other site other than LinkedIn for professionals to network and drive recruiters to their profiles? LinkedIn is the first place people go. If you're a software developer, GitHub, or some of those, but LinkedIn is the place to invest your time, in the US anyway. I didn't understand your comment on cover letters. What I said about cover letters is this is something that we all learned when we went to college. For some reason, we still do it. My experience is that very few people read cover letters. Most cover letters are just a prose description of what's in the resume. So most headhunters give the whole thing 6 seconds. They're going to focus on the resume. It's a lot easier to read than a cover letter. Instead of a cover letter, send a 3 to 5 sentence, super engaging, non-spammy message to try to get them open to a discussion, right? I'm just making this up on the fly, but I hope you're holding up okay. I read online that you just launched this new coronavirus test. It's fascinating. I'd love to be involved. How can I learn more about it? Or, something like that, right? As opposed to attach as my resume and here's my cover letter. That's just a losing strategy. Does applying for a job now make any sense? No, do not apply online. Find the listing online. Although if it was even before 3 weeks ago, it's ancient history. That job has probably been put on hold. But if it's a new job that you see posted somewhere, that's great, but don't apply online. Use your LinkedIn network, track down anyone anyone that works at that company to get a personal introduction to the hiring manager, not to HR. Our on-demand office is important to show you can rent a conference room to hold a meeting with prospective startups and investors. Right now, people are worried about toilet paper. I don't think they care about an on-demand office. How long do you expect this massive disruption to impact hiring? My personal opinion, I don't know any more than you guys know, is it'll take 2 years to get back to where we were 20 days ago. But we will snap back relatively quickly. The issue will be if for whatever reason this takes 6 months, then restarting the business engine, which also means hiring, will take some time. So tell me how long the disruption is going to be, and I can tell you how fast we'll snap back. Top talent will always be in demand. It's that hard to find good people. I've been looking for a while. I've been through the people I know list. Thoughts on best ways to circle back to people you've contacted? Yes. Circle back to them and say, hey, the world has changed. How can I add value? What are you guys struggling with? I have 3 ideas for your business on how to get back on track. How's your family? There's a ton of reasons to get back on track. Can you offer some guidance during the session on starting a consulting practice? Sure. Anything you want to talk about for an hour, I'm all yours. My resume is very eclectic. I love that word. Do you see more opportunities coming on the operations management side or sales? Both, right? Sales is a shaker. Operations is a maker, right? So I guess I prefer sales because if you can bring in business, you will never go hungry, especially in this new normal. But not everyone is a salesperson. And if you can make the product and execute a great process, you've got a future too in operations. And if you can do both, even better. What's your advice for anyone that somehow lands a promising, riskier role? 2 to 3 keys when weighing pros and cons. Well, bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So if you find something that's so risky that the company is going to be out of business in the 3 months, I don't know. I'm not saying don't take it, but just I probably keep looking. Or maybe structured as a consulting engagement while you keep looking. If you take something that has a reasonable degree of risk, right now everything has risk associated with it. So waiting for the perfect thing to show up in 6 months or 12 months, you're gonna run out of toilet paper. So I wouldn't do that. How do people in their 60s stay relevant? I guess the answer is stay relevant. I don't know how to answer that question very well. I'm 52. I think I stay relevant. Reading, teaching, learning, mentors. When you give up and stop breathing, then you're not relevant. Age is an excuse. Should we either bother applying for roles that are not 100% match if you have transferable skill set and ability? It's going to be a harder stretch, but if it's a really tight fit, right? If you're really convinced that you could demonstrate to me or anyone in a couple of minutes how these skills line up, then sure, it's worth applying. But you have to do that work. Don't expect them to do that work. You have to explain, I read your job description. It looks like you're looking for these 3 things. I've done all 3 things. I did this in this industry. I did this in that industry. I did, right? Here are the results. That's not a huge stretch. Are one-page recommendations out of date, or should I focus? Don't spend time on a one-page recommendation letter. They go right in the garbage because that is just a waste of time. Recommendations on LinkedIn, I don't look at them either. I assume that they're friends or paid or cajoled or whatever. When they ask you what's your salary, what do you say? You never answer the question with. You never answer the question. In any negotiation, the person that throws out the number first loses. So you never answer the question, what was your salary? If they ask the second time, you say, well, over the past 5 years, my comp has ranged pretty dramatically from $42,000 to $110,000. And it really depends on what I'm being asked to do, what's the equity, and the other intangibles. So obviously, in a time like this, I have a lot more flexibility than I've had in the past. So it's kind of a non-answer answer. Since we're all working remotely right now, should I give much attention to where the job is based? Great question. I wouldn't spend a second, not a second, on any job that's outside your market, outside your hometown right now, unless it's a virtual job. In other words, it's going to stay virtual. Waste of time, because you can't even get there to interview anyway. How do you demonstrate to a target company that it has a real need for a particular service that it may not be aware of? Your job is to make them aware. It either increases revenue, and you've done that for other companies in the past, or it decreases their risk, and here's why, and here's how much that risk is. Quantify, quantify, quantify. If they still don't get it, go to another company and make the same pitch. You only need to find one client that gets it. How can a head of marketing prevent their team from the chopping block? Well, if your marketing team has not been delivering results, it's too late. I'm sorry to be blunt, but it's too late to come up with metrics or proof that you're adding value, i.e. filling the pipeline, generating revenue, expanding the brand. Marketing is always the first thing cut, which is ridiculous, because the last thing you want to cut when times are bad is your advertising and marketing, but that's what's about to happen. So be a maker or be a shaker. Find a way to position yourself as a great leader who leads great teams to drive revenue. Does no word after an interview mean forget it, move on? No, not necessarily. Right now, it means they're trying to get situated at home and get their kids set up while they shop for toilet paper. So people have a lot of stuff in their mind right now. You follow up a few times, and after a few times, yeah, it probably means forget it, move on. Most hiring managers and most companies, it's a black hole. So after a certain amount of time, I probably would move on. Do you see companies have a tendency to lowball the comp and expect more from candidates? Sure. Right now, we're going through a very quick deleveraging, which means it's about to become a buyer's market, and the company's the buyer. 20 days ago, the candidate, you were the buyer. That's about to switch. I'm not saying you should take a job at minimum wage necessarily, but you have to understand with that supply and demand that your market value has changed very quickly. My boss is very distracted by COVID. How do I balance over communicating and risk annoying him? It's a great question. We're all going to feel our way through this. Talk with him candidly. Have an honest heart-to-heart about what kind of communication you want from me, right? Do you want to hear from me every day, every week? Do you want me to be proactive? How do you want to handle it? Kind of understand the new rules of the road. What if you've been not working for a year because you're taking care of a sick family member? How do you position with prospective employers? I recommend being very upfront about it. I actually included on the LinkedIn. Was out of the job market for 6 years taking care of a sick family member. At the same time, the second bullet is the skills that you picked up during that time. The YouTube course that you took, the book that you wrote. If you literally had nothing to show for that time other than sitting bedside, it's going to be a bit tougher to explain. But leaving out altogether and having a gap just brings out the worst assumptions. How much less should we expect to compare versus what I used to earn? It's situation by situation. If you're the only person in the US that can do something, a particular thing, and you can do that thing via video, you're not going to take a hit. If anything, you're going to take an increase. If, on the other hand, you find that your skill is pretty common, then, yeah, you're probably going to take a hit. It wouldn't surprise me to take 5, 10, 20, 50% hit over the foreseeable future. I've been working with executives the past week where in an effort to try to keep the team together, they're asking people to take 10, 20, 50% pay cuts. So I think that's very possible. I've now shifted to the Cabernet part of the evening, but keep the questions coming. We still have a lot of people online, and I'm happy to stay as late as you guys want. I definitely have nowhere to go. I can assure you of that. I can't go outside. Okay, next one. Can you explain again what we do in the hour session with Headhunter Edge? Sure. It's really up to you. So it's an hour one-on-one, any way you want to spend it, as long as it's career focused and as long as we're not wallowing. I'll mock interview you and give you very, very tough feedback, and it'll be taped so you can learn from it. We can map out a career strategy. We can go through your LinkedIn. Totally up to you. But no wallowing. Do you think consumer brand companies will offer lower salaries? That's I can't predict that. There are some consumer brands that are kicking ass right now. I talked to the CEO of a company today that's 100% e-commerce bicycle company, and their sales are going through the roof because anyone that was going to buy a bike in a store is now buying it online, and he's one of the only ones that sells it online. So I think it's going to depend on the company. What else? You might be running out of steam, and I don't want to finish my Cabernet by myself. Are there any other questions before we wrap it up? Oh, here's one. I'm an email marketer. Any industries where this can be valuable? Every industry. Most marketers, myself included, because we're all in marketing, are realizing that social media platforms are very dangerous to entrust your list. You got to have your own email list. And if you're good at that, building a list, writing the emails, your future is very secure. But you got to figure out within email marketing, what is your expertise? Is it setting up the email platform? Is it writing the emails? Is it writing subject lines? I've seen experts on just subject lines for emails that pitch me all the time. I've tried a few. They're amazing. Some of them are amazing. Is it landing page design, right? Very hard. Email marketing has become so complex that it's actually very hard to be great at each piece. It's almost impossible. A lot more questions are now coming in. What if you've been talking to a company for 6 months about a role and they just went quiet? I don't think you should be surprised that they just went quiet. We just faced the biggest issue in our nation's history in many years. It's kind of back to basics. It's back to square one. Go back to the company. I'm still interested. I know the world has changed. Are you still hiring? What's the latest? They may be laying off for all, I know companies that were hiring 3 weeks ago that started layoffs this week. Do U.S. companies really value international experience? Depends on the U.S. company. If they sell internationally, meaning a good chunk of their sales come internationally, or they're planning to launch internationally, which of course right now is going to be on hold, then sure, international experience could be very useful. If you have particular international experience, you could, hang out your shingle and market that expertise to different companies, but that is not going to be their priority right now. I've been a profitable marketing consultant for 6 years, and now I'm thinking about taking a full-time position. I've heard that a consultant makes me a less desirable candidate. That's bogus. But for all the reasons we've talked about for the past 2 hours, it's going to be tough right now to make that switch. So I understand you may be interested in finding a full-time job, probably the wrong time to do it. If you have a few consulting clients, or you can pick up a few more, even at a lower rate, I'd probably weather the storm that way. I don't think it's going to be that long a storm. And then once the storm passed, you can pursue a full-time role, probably with one of your consulting clients. Has the recession started? And when is the tsunami expected to hit the market? Well, it's already hit the stock market. If you mean the job market, the latest numbers I saw yesterday, they're already starting to hit. I don't have a crystal ball, but the experts I see are saying that the recession has begun already. So all you got to do is outrun everyone else. You don't need to outrun the bear. What are the best industries to focus on right now? Yes, I had a slide earlier. Send me an email. I'll send you the deck, and it has about 30 industries that are going to do well. As a recruiter, does anyone write you handwritten thank you notes? Does it impress you? I've probably gotten 5 over my career. Does it impress me? Chocolate would probably impress me more. Please do another webinar soon. Okay. This has been helpful. Okay. What's your opinion of sites like ExecUnet, Ivy Exec, and the ladders? Are they worth the investment? Uh, I know all the CEOs of these companies, they're fine services. There's nothing wrong with them, but usually they don't get an exclusive on a job, right? If I'm a CEO or a head of marketing and I want to get a job out there so people hear about it, I'm not going to give it exclusively to those sources. And so you're probably going to see those same listings in other places. If money is no object, sure, can't hurt. If we go consulting route, any recommendation of where to get affordable health insurance? No, but there's online marketplaces for most states where you can still get affordable coverage. It's usually HMO, not PPO, but you can still find it. In Headhunter Edge, how does the monthly service work? Oh, okay. So just to be clear, it's a 1-hour video session. We'll cover anything you want. And then after that, it's $50 a month for as long as you want. Unlimited access to me via email for questions. So that's how that works. Do you plan to make a recording of this session available? I have a friend. Yes, you'll get a video of this session. You can share it with anyone you want. Go easy on the Cabernet. Thank you. Any other questions? We got a few hundred folks left. Someone must have a question. Okay. I am going to let you get back to your family or your work. Oh, here's one. Does taking online classes from Harvard or Wharton help with one's candidacy, or is it just resume filler? Great question. Don't take those classes to pad your degree or pad your profile and impress people with the Harvard or Wharton name. Impress them because you're developing your skills, and then put those skills to work. That's a great investment. Now, you have to ask yourself, is the $5,000 I'm about to spend at one of those top schools going to teach me more than a $20 video on YouTube? I'll leave that to you to decide. I'm on the faculty of Kellogg, my alma mater. We have amazing online education, but not everyone can afford it. So you have to really ask yourself, where can you learn it? Do you know anything about Advisory Cloud? I've heard about it, but I can't render an opinion. What is your turnaround time for emailed questions on Headhunter Edge? It's 24 hours or less. Can you talk more about side hustles? It's kind of a broad question. By side hustle, and I hate that term, what I basically mean is another revenue stream to diversify so that if, God forbid, you lose your primary, you have some revenue coming in. Goes back to the Venn diagram. Think about what you are great at, what you love doing, and who needs that particular expertise. Make a list and find a way to monetize it. If it's producing an online course, if it's consulting, much like Headhunter Edge, I guess you could say is, if it's doing live webinars where you then sell some product, it's all about side hustles, right? Someone had the idea earlier. They said, I know how to teach people how to be great wartime leaders. That's going to be a pretty useful skill for the next 3 to 6 months that a lot of leaders could benefit from, because a lot of leaders are consensus managers and they take forever to make decisions. Man, if you could teach them how to be wartime leaders, I would think they'd pay you $50, $100, $1,000, $10,000, whatever. Any other questions? Yeah, here's one. The risk profile of my company was very high, but I'm leading a project that's essential. Does that materially change my risk? That's a great question. Does it materially change it? I guess it depends, right? On whether launching that product is your CEO's number one focus right now and you're leading that project. I think you're in pretty good shape. If it's a product that's going to add, it's important, but it's going to add some incremental revenue, but your CEO is worried about whether we're going to make paychecks in 3 months, you get the point. It's all relative. So think about kind of the numerator or the denominator, right? What's the denominator of the company? And is this a game changer? Or is this the strategy they've been betting on for the next 2 years? Then sure, you're in pretty good shape. Otherwise, you're more of a staff function than a line function. Okay, I think we are winding down. We've been about 2 hours. Enjoy your Cabernet. I certainly hope you have one. I suspect over the next 3 months you're going to need it. So I've stocked up. That's one of the industries that I think is going to do very, very well, by the way, are sin industries. wine and beer amongst them. Was great to spend time with you all. I really appreciate the chance to share some of this stuff, and I hope it was useful. And I wish you a good evening. Be safe, wash, rest, get your sleep, and we will meet again.